Welcome to Tigrai Television. I'm Mary Nimana. I'm here with today's news. Stay tuned. United Nations Population Fund UNFPA Ethiopia Office Representative Suzanne Mandong says the international community has failed women and girl survivors of sexual violence in Tigray. The representative arrived in Ma'ala this afternoon and paid a visit to One Stop Center, an Eider Comprehensive Specialized Hospital where victims of sexual violence are treated. Mandong was accompanied by Head of Bureau of Health, Dr. Amanil Haile, Medical Director of Eider Hospital, Dr. Kubram Gabrasilase, and Coordinator of the One Stop Center, Mulu Mesfin, who explained the situation of the survivors suffering from inadequate treatment in the center. The UNFPA representative also made a visit to Hamlin Fistula Center in the city, where survivors suffering from fistula receive treatment. Suzanne Mandong stated that the world needed to work harder in helping women and girls in Tigray.
We are here to report. First of all, we have come to see with our own eyes as someone in the city. And we are aware through the reports that we are getting from our colleagues on the ground. So it was really critical that we arrived here and then we see from, and also listen to him. I will recommit our organization. As you know, for us and across the world, any crisis has a woman and a girl's face, right? It shouldn't be this way. It should not. It's wrong. And gender-based violence, just to start with it, is a gross violation of human rights. So we should be protecting these girls and these women. It is critical and extremely urgent that all of us consider how to scale up, as you were saying, in terms of starting with the medical supplies. How do we scale up our support to women and girls in this region? And as I said, I really would like to commit not only UNFPA, actually it's the whole system.
Head of Tigray Bureau of Health, Dr. Amanil Haile, says he hopes the visit by the UNFPA country representative would scale up the organization's support to women and girls in Tigray. Coordinator of the One Stop Center Eider Hospital, Mulu Mesfin, on her part states that the center is currently at a level where it cannot provide any care for survivors at all. She says it's her expectation that such visits bring a solution to survivors.
Her organization is involved in supporting the care of mothers and victims of sexual violence. From our side, our expectation was for her to have a look at what the service looks like and what do we have at hand. So it seems we have agreed that there is a lot to do. In fact, to quote her, she said, we have failed the mothers and sisters of Tigray as a system. So we hope UNFPA will scale up its support to Tigray.
We haven't any medication now. We haven't STI medications, abortion medications, surgical medications, even any medications. We haven't. The emergency pills, HIV prophylaxis. We haven't any medications in medical supplies now. We are the available person is the health worker and the building, the hospital only. I'm expecting from the visit there is different. We have many scarcity with medications and medical supplies. If every world knows about our problem, especially the Canadian NFPA knows, sees, visits the different crises in our hospital, especially with medications, medical supplies, and others. I expect from this visit everything is available after a time.
Many are now denouncing Ezema for its statement on Wednesday calling on arming civilians. Prominent politicians, including TPLF's Getachew Radda, OFC's Jawar Mohammed, criticized the statement while at the same time calling for a peaceful resolution to the raging violence. Expert in international relations Molla Radda also says Ethiopian Education Minister Birhanu Nega goes in line with those individuals spoiling the peace deal. Let's take a look at the report.
The tweets from Getachew Reda and Jawar Mohammed are very clear. Denouncing Idema's statement on arming civilians, they are calling for peaceful resolution of the inter-communal clashes in Oromia. These critics come after Idema and its leader Burhanu call on the need to arm civilians so as to make them able to defend themselves in the ongoing violence. Burhanu Naga, Ethiopia Education Minister, blames TPLF for fueling the violence behind.
By the way, such violence rages right after battles against the TPLF are finished. This is not accidental. It happened in the last time. Now it is the same.
Jawar called Idema's statement ridiculous and stupid, while Getachew Reda sharply criticized the accusation against his party. Getachew asks where members of cabinet like Burhanu are taking orders. Expert in international relations Dr. Mola Reda has also called Burhanu Naga and Idema's statement very dangerous.
So the very fact that a minister for education of within the Ethiopian government is proposing arming civilians as a solution for the raging intercommunal violence is deeply irresponsible, because if citizens are arming themselves on a daily basis in the context of this raging fire, which is consuming the lives of thousands of Ethiopians on a weekly basis, then citizens cannot do much else, because it's a responsibility of the government to protect the rights and the physical safety of citizens, and the right to live is one of the most fundamental and sacred rights that citizens can possess, and ensuring that right is preserved is the very responsibility of the government or the state. In the context of this raging communal conflict, some part of the population armed itself, then a different group organizing itself and mobilizing itself around a different identity is also, in response to this mobilization and arming of a different group, going to arm itself. And what you have is what in the field of international relations scholars call classic security dilemma. Some group arming itself to defend itself from some danger, forcing others to do the same, and that generating a downward spiral of insecurity and chaos.
Getachew Reda accuses some individuals in government ranks, such as Burhanu, are doing all they can to fund the flames of violence and are standing in the way of hard-won peace process. Dr. Mullah says there are spoilers to the peace deal from multiple sides, and that Burhanu Naga's statement is in line with those.
And so it's possible that there are elements within Ethiopia on this side or on that side that might be playing the role of a spoiler. And I don't think Professor Burhanu Naga's statement illogically and without any kind of evidence implicating the TPLF in some of the most shocking communal violence across the country is helpful to the implementation of this peace agreement.
The Pretoria Agreement under Article 3 in clear terms stated the permanent cessation of hostilities shall include all forms of cessation of hostile propaganda, rhetoric and hate speech. However, officials in the Ethiopian government, such as Burhanu, continue to violate the provisions.
Washington Post East Africa chief Catherine Harold said most of the killings in Merab Abaya were carried out by Ethiopian military members. In her conversation with BBC on Wednesday, Harold stated that the massacre in Merab Abaya is one of the 8 imprisonment camps where former Tigray and ENDF members have been killed. Abil Tsagawa has the details.
Reports of atrocities on ethnic Tigrayans are coming out. Washington Post revealed the massacre of 83 Tigrayans by Ethiopian military members in a makeshift camp in Merab Abaya, southern Ethiopia. In her interview with BBC, Washington Post's East Africa bureau chief Catherine Harold says she has been tracking killing of prisoners at 8 different camps in Ethiopia, and that she has spoken with witnesses and family of victims.
There's one particular mass killing that we really focused on in a prison in Merab Abaya, and we spoke to a number of witnesses to that killing. We spoke to medical personnel who treated survivors, residents, and that was about 83 prisoners killed in a single afternoon when their guards turned on them. I've also managed to speak to the families of some of those prisoners who've been notified that their loved ones died but we're simply told that they died in the line of duty and given no further details.
In phone conversation with one detainee in Wandotika, one of the imprisonment camps, on Tuesday, Tigray television confirmed the continuation of these atrocities in the imprisonment camps.
ሕክምና የብሉ ጾሪ ስተማ የብሉ 12 ሰዓት ናይ ንቆ ተኸፊትካ 12 ሰዓት ናይ ምሽት ኢኻ ትዕጾ እና ብሕማምን ብኻሊእ ዝተፈላለዩ ነገራትን ንሳቐይና ዘለና
In its report, Washington Post had said it has spoken with a detainee at Wandotika who says 5 prisoners were killed at a facility that holds hundreds of soldiers. The detainee said most of the massacred Tigrayans served in peacekeeping mission in Abyei and other African Union missions, including in Somalia. Civil rights activist Desta Haile further claims that the imprisonment camps are higher than that of the Washington Post report. Desta said on Tuesday that the killing of Tigrayans started long before the war on Tigray broke out in November of 2020.
The target against Tigrayans who were members of the Ethiopian National Defense Force started way before the war on Tigray broke out, which means before November 2020. For example, you can take the assassination of General Sa'ara Mokonnen. As far as my information is concerned, the Mi'rab Abaya massacre was carried out under the full knowledge of the Ethiopian government, mainly the Ethiopian National Intelligence Unit led by Temesgen Truna.
Washington Post's Katrin and Tighat's Desta both urge on the need to bring perpetrators to justice. Katrin says how the government will react to the massacre in Mi'rab Abaya will determine the way it will handle all the gruesome atrocities committed in the conflict.
The current sort of peace deal doesn't really have a clear mechanism for accountability. So I think the way that the government reacts to this will be indicative of how they might react to other injustices or crimes that may have been committed during this conflict.
As per the peace agreement signed in South Africa and in Kenya, the remaining Tigrayan detainees, be it civilians or those who were members of the Ethiopian National Defense Force, should be released. At least the United Nations and the African Union and the international community, they should demand for their release.
Despite the signing of a peace deal a month ago, more than 70,000 Tigrayan ANDF members remain in prison, with most of them living under fear to another outbreak of violence and extrajudicial killings.
As aid coming into the region barely meets the demand on the ground, malnutrition cases among children continue to soar. Our reporters met a 3-year-old child in Abu Adi General Hospital weighing just 7 kilograms. Du'umait Walda is still unable to get the therapeutic food he desperately needs due to the depletion at the hospital, and as new supplies are yet to enter the region. Sarah Kalali has a report.
At 3 years old, Du'umait Walda only weighs 7 kilograms. Due to continuous lack of food at home and no care available at hospitals, his body has wasted away. His father, Tuwalda Gabriel, came to the hospital several times, only to be sent back due to lack of medication.
Before the war, he was in a good physical condition. It's only after that he became like this. I have come here before, but they told me there wasn't any medication, so I had to go back home empty-handed. But he fainted at home, so I brought him here.
Due to the lack of food at home and hospital, the father says he's concerned for his son's life.
We don't have any food at home, and they don't have therapeutic food here either.
Gannat works as a nurse here at Abu Adi Hospital and says many of the children that come to the hospital have nothing to eat at home and that the hospital is also unable to provide any.
There isn't anything they can get when the children come here. Milk and therapeutic food are scarce. Other food types are also unavailable.
Gannat struggles to control her emotions as she talks to us about the children at this hospital. She tells us her own child is also suffering from malnutrition.
My child is suffering from malnutrition due to lack of food. We're under difficult conditions here. As for me, I'm always at work, so I cannot breastfeed my child. I work all day, so there's no way my child can get breast milk.
Gannett tells us being unable to help the many children that visit the hospital every day has had a heavy toll on her and her colleagues.
Even we are disturbed by what we see here. When we want to inject them with IV, we cannot find their veins. I have the knowledge on what to do, but I cannot do anything for them now. If there's no provision, there's nothing we can do.
Gannett says as she watches many of her patients die due to lack of medicine and medical supplies, she says she feels the world does not see her.
The world has to see us, but I don't think they do. We're just closed away here with no one to see us. We're working to the best of our abilities. We have consultations. We tell them it's going to be peaceful soon, but that's all.
Senior humanitarian advisor for the United States mission to the United Nations, Samuel Vygorsky, had said the presence of Eritrean forces in Tigray continue to hamper the delivery of aid to vulnerable populations in need.
Tigray Electric Utility has announced early on Wednesday that it has regained access to electricity from the national power grid after 20 months of complete blackout due to the war. Our reporter spoke with Girmay, Head of Communication Affairs of Tigray Electric Utility, on the matter. Ayla Gabru has more.
Girmay, Head of Communication Affairs of Tigray Electric Utility, says Mekelle and its surroundings have got the excess of electricity, which has been discontinued in late June of 2021 by the federal government of Ethiopia after the capital of Mekelle was captured by the Tigray Defense Forces. He also added that communication has also been started with the authorities of the Ethiopian Electric Utility like his office did during the pre-war times.
Following the commencement of bilateral communications with the federal government, we've sent two teams. One team to Alamata and the other team was headed to Shire to conduct damage assessment. In connection to this, much work has been done to reconnect the main line with the Alamata substation. Mekelle and its surroundings have regained electricity access on December 6, 2022. Right after 20 months of blackout, now we've reconnected the national power grid. Thus, as Tigray, only few areas under the Mekelle substation are able to gain access to electricity. For instance, Mkhoni substation in the south, Mekelle substation, Wuro and Adugrat in the east, Abiadi in the central part of Tigray have reconnected recently.
He also says the resumption of electricity service in Tigray would enable to solve the socio-economic chaos of the people, which has been accumulated for the past 2 years due to the brutal war declared in November 4 of 2020 in the region. On top of this, he also said that his office is firmly working to ensure the attainability of the electric access in areas where they are out of reach of the service.
Though much work has not been done on the attainability of the service, we're doing our best to address electricity in all areas of Tigray in the course of time. For example, Nabalat, Adaga Arbi, Inticho and Drama are some of the towns which have been affected by the war in Tigray. Here, we need to conduct an assessment. Lines, transformers, and village are now completely left out of service due to collateral damage. However, we'll continue expanding our service delivery capacity turn by turn.
He also called on the federal government of Ethiopia to highlight its due commitment in doing further jobs regarding the full-scale resumption of electric delivery services across the region, as communication problem is still hampering in facilitating the resumption process.
If we solve our problem step by step in the future, we'll also reconnect with Adwa, Aksum and Humara substations. There is a good communication with the head office in Addis, and it has to be continued for more work in meantime too.
According to the Pretoria Peace Accord, the federal authorities shall assume federal responsibilities in accordance with the Constitution for all areas taking the mandate of resuming basic services across Tigray. The initial step to restore electricity in some part of Tigray has started, while other essential services like that of banking, telecommunication and internet still remain under a complete blackout.
That wraps up our news for the hour. Thank you for tuning in.